Today we're going to talk about graphing. In front of you, you should have a handout entitled Introduction to Graphing Video Notes. Fill out the handout as we go through the PowerPoint so we can discuss this tomorrow in class. The first slide asks you what month has the most birthdays. You will notice that there's a picture of a bar graph. A bar graph is an easy way to compare data. So we're looking at the individual months and how many students have birthdays within those particular months. So a graph is a visual aid that allows us to interpret data quickly and easily. You can tell by the title of the graph, birthdays of students by month, deals with the number of students, which is located on the y-axis, and the different months of the year. So looking at this bar graph, we can conclude that the month of May has the most birthdays, with a total number of 7 students have birthdays in the month of May, which is the most per month. You can easily tell that May had the most students' birthdays. Graphs are pictures. They are pictures or visual aids that provide us with information. They are a fast or easy way to interpret data. So we will use graphs often throughout the course of this year in science to analyze and extrapolate information from. There are 3 types of graphs that you will use throughout the course of this year. The first one being a bar graph, which is a comparison of data. Easy way to compare data. The second one is a pie graph or a circle graph, which shows percentages of a whole. And the third one is a line graph, which shows trends or changes over time. Time is the key. Anytime you see time, you know that you are dealing with a line graph. Anytime you see percentages or parts of a whole, you know that you are dealing with a pie graph. And anytime you have a comparison in data, you are dealing with a bar graph. Components of a good graph. Graphs require the correct ingredients. The very first thing that you need to do in order to have a graph that is readable and understandable is you must draw the y-axis using a ruler, and you must draw the x-axis. The y-axis is always the vertical axis, and the x-axis is always the horizontal axis. So using a ruler, the very first thing that you do anytime you are making a bar graph or a line graph, you are going to create your y-axis, and then you are going to create your x-axis. The dependent variable, which is what you are measuring, it is also known as the responding variable, is always placed on the y-axis. The independent variable, or the manipulated variable, always goes on the x-axis. So here is an easy acronym for you to remember, which is referred to as dry mix, the D standing for dependent variable, the R standing for responding variable, which means exactly the same thing on the y-axis. Mix, which stands for manipulated or independent variable, located on the x-axis. Next, choose a scale that is appropriate for each of the axes. You can see here we have a line graph, okay, where we are comparing the fourth quarter profits in U.S. dollars. So on the x-axis, we have the months, October, November, December, and on the y-axis, we have the different profits in U.S. dollars. Okay, so we're going from 20,000 to 60,000 to 100,000. You will notice that the increments are in 40,000. And we're dealing with dollars to make sure that your axes are labeled with the correct units. Include a legend when necessary to further clarify your data. Here you will notice we have a triple line graph where the lime green color represents Texas, blue represents California, and red represents Nevada. Finally, give your graph a title that states the relationships between the dependent variable and the independent variable. So for this particular example, we have 2010 fourth quarter profits. So here we are dealing with the profits in the months. Okay, so we put that into a title format where you can easily look at this line graph and identify that we're dealing with profits over months. And finally, pie graphs are shaped like a circle. The size of each slice is determined by the percentage it will represent. On the pie graph, the independent variable is whatever the slice of the pie represents. So each of the individual pies are the actual independent variables, and the dependent variable is the amount of, or the percentage of that particular pie slice out of the whole. Tomorrow we will continue to discuss graphs in class. Make sure you are familiar with the three different types of graphs, what makes up a good graph, starting with a title, making sure that your y-axis is labeled, your x-axis is labeled, you have the correct intervals, you've used a ruler, you have a legend if it's necessary, and your variables are placed on the correct axis. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow in class and continuing our discussion on graphs.